This is the last section in this chapter. This is section 5.7, where we are going to learn how to solve equations by clearing out the fractions or clearing out the decimals. So last section, we learned how to solve equations by using the multiplicative inverse. This time, we're going to learn how to just completely get rid of the fractions, which I know that you guys are all super excited for because you just love fractions. So, let's look at ones where we're going to solve the equation by first clearing the fractions. So, we're going to do 4 of these. Okay, if we start out with 7 over 16x minus 3/8 equals 3/4. Now, instead of isolating our variable, what we can do is we can get rid of all of the fractions. Now, how we're going to do that, the first thing we need to do is we need to look at every single one of our denominators, and we're going to find out what the least common denominator between all of these numbers is. So if I look at 16, 8, and 4, think of a number that is a multiple of all of those numbers. Now, if you're not sure, you could make your cake. Now, for me, I'm just going to go ahead and kind of think through the multiples of each number, and I do notice that all 3 of these numbers go into 16. So once you find the least common denominator, you are going to multiply both sides of the equation by that number. What this is going to do is it's going to get rid of all my denominators. Now, whenever we do this, we have to keep in mind that we are actually using the distributive property because I'm multiplying this whole left-hand side by 16. So I have to multiply 7/16 x by 16. I also have to multiply negative 3/8 by 16. So when I distribute out that 16, I get 16 over 1 times 7 over 16x minus 16 over 1 times 3 over 8, and do the same thing on the right hand side. I have 3 over 4 times 16 over 1. Okay, now I have a lot of fractions to start simplifying. If I look at my first, so that very first term on the left hand side, I notice I have a 16, I have a 16. They're going to divide out, and the only thing I'm left with is 7x. My next fraction, I notice that I can divide out an 8 from both of those numbers, and I get negative 2 times 3, which gives me a minus 6. And on the right hand side of the equal sign, I notice I can divide out a 4, so I end up with 3 times 4, which gives me 12. Notice now I have no fractions left. If you do this correctly, that should happen every single time. And now it's just solving a two-step equation. So we would add 6 to both sides. So we would end up with 7x equals 18. Divide both sides by 7. We end up with 18 over 7, which we want to change into a mixed number. 7 will go into 18 2 times with the remainder of 4. And our denominator stays as 7. So you should get 2 4/7. Let's try another one together. This time, let's try 1/2 x plus 7/10 equals 4 over 5. Okay, once again, the first step is we need to look at all of my denominators, and I'm going to find the least common multiple between all of my denominators. So this time I'm looking at 2, 10, and 5. So you could make your cake or just kind of start thinking through the multiples of each of those numbers. And you may notice that all of these numbers share 10 as a multiple. So we are going to multiply each side of the equal sign by 10. And once again, we've got to distribute that 10 on the left-hand side. So I end up with 10 times 1/2 x plus 10 times 7 over 10. And on the right-hand side, we have 4/5 times 10. And I go ahead and write that 10 over 1 just to save me just a little step. Okay, now I have some fractions to simplify. So that first term, I can divide out a 2 from both of those numbers. I end up with 5 times 1 times x, which ends up being 5x. And for my second term, I notice I can divide out a 10. Those are going to cancel out, and I'm just left with plus 7. On the right-hand side, I can divide out a 5. So I end up with 4 times 2, which gives me 8. There are no fractions left, so now I can go ahead and solve my two-step equation. I'm going to start by subtracting 7 from both sides. I end up with 5x equals 1. Divide both sides by 5. We end up with x equals 1/5. Okay, let's have you try one on your own. I want you guys to try 3/8 x minus 2/3 equals 7/12. So start by finding the least common multiple of 8, 3, and 12. Multiply both sides of the equation by that number, and then simplify from there. I ended up with an answer of 3 1/3, so go ahead and check your answer. If you did not quite get that answer, look back and see how your work differs from mine. Okay, let's have you try one more on your own, and then we will move on to decimals. So this time I want you guys to try -2/9 equals 3/4 x minus 1/6. Okay, I ended up with a -2/27, so once again, check your answer. If you did not quite get the same thing, go back and check your work against mine. Okay, now we can also do a similar thing, except with decimals. So we are going to solve equations, but first by clearing the decimals. So I have 4 in this bottom section for you. It's a very, very similar idea. Let's look first at 2 2/10 b minus 3 64 equals 8 46. We're going to kind of think along the same lines where I'm going to multiply both sides of my equation by the same number, and I want to find some number that I can multiply both sides of my equation by, and after I multiply it by that number, there will be no decimals left. It's always going to be some power of 10, just to kind of keep it simple. And how you know what power of 10 is, you're going to look at the most number of decimals you see in a single number. So I see here 2 2/10, there's just one decimal place. But I see that 3 64 has 2 decimal places, and the same thing here with 8 46. Since I have some numbers that have 2 decimal places, I'm going to multiply both sides of my equation by 100. Because whenever I multiply a number by 100, it moves the decimal places 2 places to the right. Just like with the fractions, I have to distribute that 100 to everything inside that set of parentheses. So I'm going to take 100 times 2 2/10 b minus 100 times 3 64. On the right hand side, I'm going to take 100 times 8 46. Now remember, like I just said, if you multiply a number by 100, it moves the decimal places 2 places to the right. So in this first number, it's going to move 2 places to the right, so I end up with 220b. For my second term, it's going to move my decimal 2 places to the right, so I end up with 364. For my last term on the right-hand side, moves it 2 places to the right, and I end up with 846. So notice there are no more decimal places. And now I can solve this two-step equation as normal. So I'm going to add 364 to both sides. When I do that, I should end up with 1,210. And on the right-hand side, I have 220b. And finally, to solve for b, I'm going to divide both sides by 220. Whenever you do all that fun division, you should end up with b equals 5 5/10. Let's try another one. I like this method. I think it's kind of neat. Let's try 8 6/10 equals 5 8/10 y minus 3. Okay, first I need to figure out what power of 10 I want to multiply both sides of my equation by. And I see in this example, the most number of decimal places I see in any given number is 1. So this time, I'm just going to multiply both sides of my equation by 10. Okay, so I'm going to take 10 times 8 6/10, and then I'm going to take 10 times 5 8/10 y minus 3. times 10. Okay, when I multiply any number by 10, it just moves the decimal one place to the right. So 10 times 8 and 6/10 turns into 86. 10 times 5 and 8/10 y ends up being 58y, and 3 times 10 is 30. Okay, we're going to add 30 to both sides. 86 plus 30 ends up being 116, and I have a 58y on the right-hand side. We divide both sides by 58, and it goes in twice exactly, so y ends up being 2. All right, let's give you a couple ones to try out on your own. For the first one, I want you to try 2 and 3/10 equals 5 and 14 hundredths plus 8/10 m.